Yeah. Or
It's
you're recording now.
You're recording.
it didn't give me any other option, so that's
Okay,
fine.
do it. Okay, so here we are. I don't know if we want to call this Fun Ideas Podcast. Basically, I'm doing an interview with Charles Rosenay, who is a good friend of mine. We talk monkeys. And Andy Cahan is a new friend of mine who's played keyboards, and we're finding out Mellotron on a lot of Turtles records and a number of other records that we'll probably talk about in the next hour or so. So welcome to the show.
Well, I am very, very honored to be here, my friend. This is fun. You guys are a lot of fun. I can tell already.
Well, thank you. So I'll let Charles, it seems like Charles had a few questions. I have a bunch of questions. They're on paper here. So it's like, I'll let Charles start.
Let me just start off by saying I never played the Mellotron with the Turtles.
Huh. That's
All right.
so many of the credits credit you as that.
No, do you mind me asking what album or what record that says that?
I'll have to look again.
I can shoot you copies because I can't look while I'm also doing a recording.
I know. We'll have to do it afterwards, which is fine. Okay. We'll keep it on keyboards then.
Yeah, basically, I do grand piano, Hammond B3, the ARP, string ensemble was the name of the synthesizer that I used back in 1975. So those were the three instruments I had on stage, and also a Casio.
Oh, wow.
A little Casio, like with one octave.
That's crazy.
And I use that for funny shit, you know.
I think on this album, New York Times, you got credited as Casio a few times, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and there's another album called Checkpoint Charlie. Do you have that?
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah,
I don't have it, but I know it plays from the center out. That's the only thing I know about it.
Yes, it's Mark Volman, Howard Kalin, and Andy Cahan sitting in the office of Flo and Eddie at the Herbie Cohen complex, which had Frank Zappa, George Duke, Tom Waits, and Flo and Eddie. So Mark Volman would roll these gigantic joints with four papers, you know, like a cigar. And each one of us had a Casio, a little Casio keyboard. And we would jam and smoke and sing. And we added on to a project that Flo and Eddie did with the Turtles backstage and in hotel rooms. It was called The Rhythm Butchers.
Yep.
And it was a whole bunch of EPs that Rhino Records put out called The Rhythm Butchers. And in any event, Checkpoint Charlie is an extension of The Rhythm Butchers, with us stoned out of our brains, sitting in the office, you know, and playing the Casio keyboards. So on that particular album, I'm on a song called "Show Me the Way to Go Home," you know, instead of home.
Right,
home.
right. Hey,
so
I'm sorry. Thank you for telling us about Checkpoint Charlie, because that was probably one of our questions. Before we go any further, if we want listeners to know that you've written one of the coolest books of all time, and it's called The Most Famous Musician You've Never Heard Of, a rock and roll scrapbook. And it's got, you know, Hendrix and Ringo and Nilsson and Little Richard. It's just on and on and on. Ray Bolger, Grace Slick. So if our listeners want, I know they're going to want to pick up a copy of that to start with. But, you know, a big part of your musical scrapbook as being the most famous musician people have never heard of, which is changing quickly with all these great interviews you're doing. When did you get started? How did you meet Howard and Mark, and when did you get started with the Turtles?
I was with Jimmy Carl Black, the Indian of the group with Frank Zappa.
Mhm.
And Jimmy and I started a band called Geronimo Black.
Right.
And Bunk Gardner and Tom Levy, Jay Contrelli, and there was a lot of other musicians that we had in the band as well. We had Oz Bach from Spanky and Our Gang. In any event, Jimmy Carl Black was asked by Frank Zappa to be in 200 Motels.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jimmy and I got in my VW bus and we drove down La Cienega Boulevard to the rehearsal studio where Flo and Eddie were with Zappa and all the crew from 200 Motels and musicians. And they were rehearsing.
I don't know why that's happening. Sorry.
They were rehearsing, the material for 200 Motels. Lonesome Cowboy Bert. My name is Bertram. I am a redneck. So anyway, at that rehearsal, Frank Zappa didn't allow anybody to smoke pot.
Did not.
But anyway, Mark Volman and I went out to the parking lot and smoked a joint. And, we started talking and he says, wow, you keyboards with Jimmy. I said, yeah, I play keyboards and I play drums and guitar and all that. So eventually, Mark asked me to join the band when we were at Cherokee Studios. It was a 4-track studio in Box Canyon in Topanga. And so I was doing a Little Richard organ overdub for a movie called Let the Good Times Roll. And Flo and Eddie were there doing overdubs on a cartoon that they did called Dirty Duck. And it was also called Cheap, which is one of the songs on Illegal, Immoral, and Fattening.
Right.
Anyway, so Bruce Robb is one of the owners of Cherokee Studios, and he was the keyboard player for Flo and Eddie's first 2 albums. But whatever the case may be, he couldn't go on the road because he was busy being an engineer. So Mark Volman just said, hey, Andy, would you be interested in going on the road? And that's what happened. In 1973, I joined the Turtles.
Wow. So 73 is when you started.
Yes, it was like mid-year, maybe a little bit. Yeah, it was the touring season. So we were doing a lot of concerts, lots of concerts.
And so you came on as both a session guy and a touring guy. So you were officially a member of the band officially. Officially,
yes. And I was the clown. Everybody liked to pick on me. But I enjoyed the attention. It was always fun to be the guy.
So you weren't in 200 Motels, you just were around it.
Yeah, it actually helped our band Geronimo Black get a record deal because, since Jimmy was a star of the movie singing Lonesome Cowboy Bert and everything, the record company was very impressed and signed us to a record deal in 1972. And that was Russ Regan, and he was with Universal Records, Uni Records.
Uni,
okay. 1972.
I remember Uni, because Uni became MCA, I believe.
But we had so much fun on the road. I mean, there are some great stories. One time we went to Australia, and I don't know if I spoke about this earlier, but I'll say it again. It really sticks out in my mind as a really wonderful story. So we're on a Pan American 747 flying to Australia, and the stewardess knew that we were from the Turtles, and she went to the captain and said, you've got some celebrities on board. You have the Turtles. So the captain, this is 1975. So there was no, 9/11 or anything. The pilot's door was wide open. So he invited us up to the cockpit, Mark Volman and I. So we went up there and we opened up these little chairs that everybody sits in the cockpit. And the pilot turns around and goes, "Do you guys play backgammon?" And I said, "Sure, yeah." So here we are sitting in the 747. It's on autopilot and playing backgammon. Then I'm looking around the windshield, and I look at the top of the windshield, and there's a whole series of numbers at the top. And I asked the captain, I said, "What are those numbers? What do they do? What is this?" He says, "Go ahead. Put your finger on that little wheel there and turn the wheel. Move the numbers on the wheel." And so I start moving the numbers, and the airplane starts to bank to the right. So I was driving this airplane with my index finger.
Wow.
With 350 souls aboard, their lives were in my hand. With my little index finger, I flew in a 747. So to me, that was very exciting.
I guess it was the only, well, not the only time you were flying with the Turtles.
Oh, I tell you, we were doing some heavy duty flying. We had a special way of hiding marijuana on the road so nobody knew we had it.
Do you want to tell us your secret?
Yeah, you buy empty capsules, like capsules for medicine. You can buy them empty with nothing in it.
Right.
And you open them up, and then you ground up the marijuana and you put them in the capsules. And then you put the capsules in your vitamin jar. And then you put that in your suitcase, and nobody knows the difference.
Now they do.
Should have told Paul McCartney.
Oh, I know. We should have told Paul McCartney when he got busted in Japan. Holy moly.
Exactly. So you never got busted. You never got busted.
Our drummer did. Our drummer had a joint in his fanny pack, at the place where they check you for guns and shit. What's that called? The TSA, whatever.
Right, security.
So, yeah, he had a joint in his fanny pack, and they had a German Shepherd. So the dog went running up to him and shoved his nose right in his fanny pack, and they busted him for possession of a joint, and he had to pay $125, and that was it.
Oh.
You toured everywhere? You went around the world with the Turtles? Yes?
Well, basically, we went to Europe as the 2.5-man show, which was just Mark and Howard and myself. And we did Australia 2 times, and New Zealand. So that's about it that I've been with the Turtles,
Yeah.
So
I think
we did a lot of great television.
Yeah. Mark, I think we want to focus now on specific albums and recordings. Yeah?
Okay.
So I'm going to let you run with that.
All right. I just wanted to ask a couple things first about your own career before the Turtles, just a little bit. I mean, I look on your website and you talked about being in a group called the Jaguars and later the Individuals in the mid-'60s. And you got a little bit of traction, but did you get any major success out of that, or what happened there?
Well, we were doing excellent. I mean, we were 15 years old, 15, 16, 17 years old. And of course, the Beatles were the reason I became a musician, Ed Sullivan Show. But I started this band. I had a Farfisa organ. It's a combo compact, Farfisa. And I played it through a Hammond Leslie speaker and a bass amp. I actually isolated the left-hand bass of the keyboard into a bass amp and the right hand of the keyboard into a Hammond Leslie. And we won every single battle of the bands in Westchester County in New York. We were the hottest band in town. And Felix Cavalieri and I were good friends. He lived right down the block from me, and we would go hang out and watch some bands play at a nightclub called the 5 Points in Rye, New York. And there was a guy on stage with a Hammond B3. And I said, holy shit, that's the most wonderful sound I've ever heard. And Felix and I were all freaked out. And then Felix got a Hammond and he went nuts. You know, that Felix and Dino were with Joey D and the Starlighters.
Right.
Yeah. But anyways, so in all these early years of me writing songs and recording in a 2-track studio, 1 take per song. You know, we just rehearsed and it was 1 take a song and wham bam. Now, one of those songs, a guy named John Calagna, who was a very close friend of Felix, took me to a studio in New York called the A&R Studios that was owned by Roy Cicala, the creator of the record plant. So we recorded an instrumental called She's Gone Away. And later on in 1980, David Gibson of Moxie Records released that instrumental from 1965 as Johnny Farfisa's greatest hits. He named me Johnny Farfisa because I played the
keyboard.
Farfisa organ. Anyway, so all of a sudden, overnight, I became a garage band cult hero. Johnny Farfisa sold out. Moxie Records sold out within a couple of months, and that same $1.98 vinyl EP goes for $78 online right now.
Wow.
So there's a record company in Spain called Munster Records, and they heard about me, and they signed me to a record deal and released all these 1965 Johnny Farfisa demos that I did, 2-track demos.
Wow.
So that was my early career before anybody knew anything about anything.
Okay. I just had to ask that because I was looking in your website, and then it jumps into things that I know. So, I mean, I just always, when I interview people, I always just have a little background, how you got started and everything. But then we'll jump right ahead into Flo and Eddie. Okay, so the first album you worked on was this one, Illegal Moral and Fattening, right?
Yes.
Now, did you work on just the live tracks or on the studio tracks too?
Well, there was one studio track that I played on that album. It's called Rebecca.
Great song.
We did that. The album was recorded live, on a 24-track truck that was parked in the alley next to the Roxy. And if you know what a 24-track machine looks like, those reels only last 15 minutes, but they needed hours of music, so they used extra large 24-track reels. I mean, that last a half an hour each, or close to that. Whatever. So we recorded 2 nights live of us performing at the Roxy. And, Gracie Slick and Alice Cooper and Bernie Taupin and all these, Commander Cody and all these people would come down and stuff. It was a real big deal. And then later on, we did some other tracks in the studio. But that was all recorded live at the Roxy. It was wonderful.
Was there a lot of stuff that didn't make the album, or is it pretty much the whole concert?
It's the whole concert
Oh,
with a
okay.
couple of added studio, like Rebecca, and then I think Let Me Make Love to You was the song they did with Ainsley Dunbar and
Okay.
some other guys, Don Preston and Gary Rolls, I think,
Yeah, I
did
think it
that
was
one
recorded
other
in
track.
74 or something, a year before,
Yes,
this, yeah.
right.
And I think they released it twice, if I read it correctly. They released it as a single, and then when the album came out, they re-released it again, and it's still unfortunately flopped because that's a great song too. So
Oh, I love all their material. That album was so much fun to record, because of all the satire and the pop star dildo and all these really funny skits that Mark and Howard. See, Howard Kalin got all of his humor from George Carlin. George Carlin was that, Howard idolizes George Carlin. His amazing, intelligent humor.
yeah, I love Carlin too. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, I know that they got the rights to do the Turtles over time, or at least their the master tapes and everything. Was there ever a conversation around that time to just bill themselves as the Turtles, or was the Flo and Eddie thing the thing carrying them on in the 70s?
Yeah, when the Turtles broke up, the management screwed Mark and Howard, and Mark and Howard were forced to not use the name Turtles because of contracts. So they had to change the name to Flo and Eddie. Which, do you know the history of how they got that name?
I believe they're named after two ex-roadies or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yes, Frank Zappa had two roadies, the Fluorescent Leech and Eddie.
Yeah.
And Flo and Eddie adopted those names, and he changed it to Flo and Eddie instead of Fluorescent Leech. Although you can see on that Warner Brothers Green album, I think, or one of them, it says Fluorescent Leech, right?
Yeah, that's the first one. Yeah, the one
right.
on my finger there. Yeah.
Yeah. But in any event, so that's how they got those two names. What were we just talking about so I can remember?
Oh, just if they ever toured or were ever considering touring around that time as Turtles, since eventually they did get the rights to the name, or did they?
Okay. So they didn't have the rights to the name Turtles, so they went on as Flo and Eddie. Eventually, for $80,000, they purchased the Masters, Happy Together, and all the White Whale Masters for 80 grand.
Wow.
They purchased it, and now they are officially Turtles again. So they were able to tour as the Turtles, but they kept Flo and Eddie because that was their new thing.
Right.
And so they would book Flo and Eddie and the Turtles. They would call the band the Turtles, and they would be Flo and Eddie.
Okay.
So that's how that came about.
All right. I was just wondering if after they purchased it, they still had reservations about using it, but it sounded like they used both eventually. So okay.
Yeah. Once they bought all the masters. Oh, the meeting no longer has a time limit. Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, I got a sign on my screen that says the Zoom.
I did too.
Meeting. Yeah. Okay. So what was the question? Quick.
Oh, sorry, we're all interrupted by that. No, just basically, touring with the Turtles in the 70s and, them using the name or not using the name, and you kind of explained it. I mean, I can move on to the next question because it kind of just leads into the next album. I mean, so the next one is Moving Targets, which you talked about. And,
unbelievable album.
This one's mainly a studio album, and my question on this is, was there, I don't know how to word it. I mean, I don't want to be offensive, but I'll say it anyway. Was there concern about not being, like making #1 hits like they did as the Turtles, or was it just like, we're just going to have some fun and screw it if we have a hit or not?
Actually, there are 2 or 3 songs on that album that we were trying to make into a hit. As
Okay.
a matter of fact, there's a song on that album. It's called Keep It Warm.
Great song.
Now,
There are great
every
songs on
time
it, but yeah, they weren't charting. That's not.
I know it was a wonderful song, but every time we performed on stage, as soon as I started that piano part intro, the audience would cheer. They loved that song. And it's very unfortunate that that didn't become a hit. And there was another song on that album that I'm very proud of. It's called Best Possible Me. And the string arrangements and the horn arrangements by Alan McMillan are all based on my piano part. So it really makes me feel, oh my God, that's made me feel really good. I mean, that the whole arrangement of the strings and horns were all because of the way I performed the piano part on that song.
Now, did they accept your input? I know you didn't get major writing credit or anything on here, but I mean, if you had like, can I play the keyboards this way or whatever on any particular track, or were you told how to play?
Well, their stuff is so easy and simple, and you just have to be tasty. You can't overplay, and you have to be really basic rock and roll simple. You can't be complicated. So they both Mark and Howard guided me on how they wanted me to play the song, and it was really easy. So there was really, nothing wrong. And if I did something stupid, they would tell me.
There's some overplaying on the drumming in some parts, and Moving Targets is definitely more of a rocker. I think the ones you mentioned are certainly standouts, but it doesn't. You wouldn't put that on and say, "Oh, this is a Turtles album."
No.
Right, yeah.
I mean, except for maybe a remake of Eleanor. That's the only thing you did on it.
Yeah, that remake of Eleanor, that's when I used that ARP string ensemble for the chorus.
Why the remake?
Oh, well, the Turtles own the song Eleanor.
Right.
And Howard Kalin wrote the song because Happy Together was #1. And the record company said, we want another Happy Together tomorrow. So Howard was on the road, and he went into his hotel room, and on a napkin, he wrote the lyrics to Eleanor. And what he did was take the same formula as Happy Together. Happy Together's vocal was designed after the Zombies' Tell Her No. See, the verse is very silky and soft, and if she should tell you, very soft, like, imagine me and you, I do, very soft. And then the chorus was tell her no, no, no. And that's why Howard went, I can't see me, real strong. So that was the formula for Happy Together. And the rhythm was straight 4. So it was bum, 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 bum. So what he did with Eleanor, you got a thing about you, very soft and airy and silky. And then Eleanor, that was the big loud chorus. So it became #1. And Howard brought the napkin to rehearsal, and Johnny Barbada, Jim Pons, Al Nickel, and Mark Volman all arranged Eleanor with Howard. So they all got writer's credit on that song. So the Turtles own the publishing and writing for Eleanor, and that's the reason that they used it on this reissue.
That's true. They owned it by now, so yeah.
The way you describe both those songs also applies to It Ain't Me, Babe, even though it's a Dylan song, where it's that silky, sweet, verses, and then it's no, it just rocks.
That is the formula of the Turtles. Yes, that
Yeah.
is the
We
formula.
figured it
And,
out.
and literally, Howard Kalin did that because of who's the lead singer on the Zombies? What's his name?
Cullen Bluestone.
Yes, that's the reason. That's the reason that Howard used that formula, the silky verse and the strong chorus.
Well, you can't compare the two because Kalen's vocal and his, strong choruses would blow away anything the Zombies did or most of the other bands around.
Well, can I just say something? And I'm being honest from the bottom of my heart.
Yes.
Howard Kalin is the best vocalist I've ever run into in my life. He's right there with Little Richard. He's right there with Paul McCartney. He's right there with every amazing vocalist. Howard never sings out of tune, ever. Ever, 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 ever. He never sings out of tune, and he can hit any note you give him.
He has an excellent range.
Ridiculous.
I mean, the song I always know, which I know you didn't record, is Love in the City, and it goes way up there. It's like, I can't hit those notes. Even when I was young, I couldn't do that.
And then Mark Volman has an extremely high range, on the harmonies. Bang a gong, get it on. That's Mark Volman and Howard Kalin singing at the top of their range, bang a gong.
Let's see. So I guess after you did those two albums, you just kind of kept touring around during the late 70s because the next album wasn't until 81. So were you constantly on tour with them basically during the 70s and 80s?
Absolutely. We were touring all the time. And we did a couple of TV shows. We did Lloyd Thaxton, and we did Dinah Shore, and we did a pilot with the unknown comic called Sunset Strip. And, we just did a bunch of stuff. We did Gary Shandling's show in 1980.
I remember that. Actually, the first time I heard of Flo and Eddie, but I didn't know the Turtles connection because I was a kid. I was a big fan of Martin Mull because he's on Fernwood Tonight, and he had Flo and Eddie on there, and they did Bun and Run commercials and things like that. Really weird stuff. Were you part of that?
Well, yeah. Martin Mull was sitting next to me at the piano. We did Midnight Special with Flo and Eddie, and Flo and Eddie and Martin Mull and a accordion player by the name of Billy Sheets. They did some funny skits. And then Flo and Eddie and the Turtles got on and did a cover tune. I forgot the name of the song already. Oh, well. Anyway, so Martin Mull did a skit with Flo and Eddie that's on YouTube. I posted it, where they're playing Peter, Paul, and Mary. And they do Puff the Magic Dragon.
Wow.
And it's Martin Mull is Peter, and Howard is Paul, and Mark Volman is Mary.
Mark, you're going to have to add that to the book.
Yeah, I guess so. I saw a photo of that. I've never seen the footage, so I'm going to have to look that up.
It's on my YouTube channel. I've got it posted with the, I can send you the link or whatever, but it's hilarious.
Andy, you mentioned hilarious, and that goes hand in hand with these guys, humor and music, and it's such a asset. And in most of the videos, we see Mark goofing around. The question is, if he played instruments and he also, did horns and did so much that's credited on the records, how come he wasn't doing that in the videos and in the live spots that we see on TV? How come it's just throwing a tambourine or just being silly? If he was such a good musician, why didn't we see that in the visuals?
Well, the saxophone stuff was with the Crossfires, when they were in that surf band way before the Turtles.
Right.
But Mark and Howard both played sax, and they weren't really great saxophone players. They were just average, one note shit. But Mark is a good guitar player. He plays rhythm.
Yeah,
And there's some really funny stuff he did with the guitar too, of course. But he is the clown. He's the one who makes everybody laugh. And Howard is the straight man. You
sure.
know, that's how they've always been. You look at all their early videos, and Howard's trying to be a serious guy singing, and Mark is, all over him, trying to make him laugh.
Right.
So that's Mark Volman. But Mark Volman is the manager. He is the businessman of the Turtles.
Sure.
He created the West Coast band and the East Coast band for financial purposes with airplanes and hotel rooms and all that. It's much easier to have an East Coast band than a West Coast band. Then you don't have to pay for all that extra expense. But in any event, Flo and Eddie are completely, their resume is so extensive, you will be mind blown if you ever Google all the stuff they've been on, from Blondie to Bruce Springsteen to, Mark Bolan to Todd Rundgren, just on and on. Every celebrity loves Flo and Eddie. They're the best.
Mm-hmm.
What else would you like to know?
The next album they did, which I'm going to show you, and I didn't think you were credited on it. So when I found out you worked on it, Rock Steady with Flo and Eddie, the reggae album. So
yes,
you appeared on this? Because it's like all the reggae artists are listed, but I didn't see any keyboardists listed, but then it's mentioned on your website. So.
Absolutely. I'm on a song called, I forgot the name of the song.
Well, I have the album here. Swing and Dine?
I recorded an organ solo on that album. That's my only cameo is on one song.
Oh, okay. So you weren't on the entire album.
On the vinyl, it lists my name, Andy Cahan Keyboards, on that specific song title.
Let me look closer. Let me look. I mean, I could read you all the titles. Prisoner of Love, Stop, Moving Away, Pearl, Dancing Mood, Party Time, Sitting in the Park, Rock With Me, Those Guys, Just Like a River, and the reggae remake of Happy Together.
Those Guys. I think it was those guys. I think. I'm not sure. But anyhow, I played the organ solo on that particular item. They went to Tough Gone Studios in Jamaica, and they used all of Bob Marley's musicians on this album. So Happy Together is reggae. Right.
You do get credit on this now that I looked at it. It is those guys. It says organ solo by Andy Cahan. So
yeah, that photograph on the front of the album was taken in the alleyway behind Herb Cohn's office.
Oh, that's funny.
In the alley. I was there when they shot that picture.
So it's not authentically in Jamaica.
Yeah, that was the same days we were doing that Checkpoint Charlie smoking the joint Casio stuff. That was the same era as doing that because that's all we did was listen to Bob Marley. That's all we did was smoke joints and listen to Bob Marley.
Now how did that? I mean, okay, this is really bizarre. Okay, so you're doing reggae like Bob Marley, and then you're doing Checkpoint Charlie like I guess like Kraftwerk or something, and then you start doing children's albums like Care Bears and Strawberry Shortcake. How does that all mesh together?
Well, financially, Mark and Howard were really not doing too good. They had to find work. And Merricombe Swanson Wolf, the same people that did Jolly Green Giant and all this, they hired Mark and Howard to do the music for Strawberry Shortcake and G.I. Joe and the Care Bears.
Right.
So they hired me to hire all the musicians. But basically, it was the Casio, the same Casio keyboard. And we were doing, Strawberry Shortcake, dun, 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 and we did all these Strawberry Shortcake albums and G.I. Joe and Care Bears, and it was all hilarious doing kids records.
Now,
But
now
then
who else worked on it? Because nobody got any credit. Flo and Eddie barely got credit. And so who's on it? I didn't even know you were on it. So.
Well, there's an incredible harmonica player by the name of Stanley Barons who played with everybody in the world. I mean, this guy is used by everybody. So he played harmonica on this album. Buzz Gardner, the trumpet player from the Mothers of Invention, he played on this album. Dusty Wakeman, the owner of Mad Dog Studios, who owns a microphone company. And who was the bass player? I think my friend Tom Levy was the bass player. Anyhow, I contracted all these guys. I actually have the contract in my book, which shows all the how the the session went, all that, all the names of the guys.
Now, did these albums just kind of run their course? I mean, they did more albums without them, or so why is there only so many? Did they just get tired of doing it?
Well, it just that was what the contract was. They did X amount of recordings, and Strawberry Shortcake split them up into a dozen different albums. And there's a bunch of G.I. Joe and Care Bear, but it's all the same stuff.
Was it all done in a few sessions? How was it done?
Well, I did most of the work on the Casio, and then we got the drummer to come in, and we got the guitar player and the horn player and the harmonica player. But it was all really simple stuff, just really simple stuff.
Right.
So
I have heard a little bit of it. I have one of the albums, I think, and I have heard some of it on YouTube. So yeah.
Right,
and did they speed up their voices? It sounded like they did a little bit, kind of almost
absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that was a whole strange era. Their office was in Miss America, the same office that Miss America was. Flo and Eddie got an office there. So they were in the same office with Miss America. It was hilarious, really funny.
Now, one thing I read, I think it's one of the Strawberry Shortcake one. It might have been one of the Care Bears one, but one of them has, it gives a credit of Christina Applegate before she was on Married with Children as doing one of the voices. Were you present when they did voiceovers, and was she there?
No, the only character I met was the girl who played Strawberry Shortcake. We went to her house. Okay. But, a lot of celebrities did the voiceovers on all that. Okay. So, yeah, it's true.
Okay. Now, let's see. I'll just move on to the next one. This one you actually got a credit as the Turtles. It's the Turtles featuring Flo and Eddie, captured live. Did you work on that one?
It all depends on the songs and where the venue was. What does it say?
Let's see. Are you on that one? It doesn't say, but it says recorded live at the Bottom Line NYC, and I know it's a 1991 concert. So, and I could tell.
There was a time when I was not with the Turtles, and there was, I was fired from the band.
What?
My wife and I were getting a divorce, and I was very depressed, and my musical chops on the keyboards were down. I wasn't up to par. And we were going to go out on the road with 2 keyboard players, and it was too expensive to hire an extra guy on stage. So they wanted me to learn all the synthesizer strings and play the piano and the organ and the Wurlitzer. So I'd have to play all these string parts and horn parts plus rhythm, which I wasn't in condition to do. So Mark Volman bought me, loaned me a synthesizer so I can practice doing all this stuff. And I failed the audition.
Wow.
So the same week that Mark and Howard said, Andy, we're going to have to get some guy who can play all this stuff. We love you, but we can't use you. And that was the same week my wife said, I'm taking the kids and I'm moving to Phoenix.
Wow.
So in that 1 week, I was fired from the Turtles and I was divorced and my wife took my kids to Arizona.
Wow.
So I was completely blown off the planet Earth. But later on, I did the demo Doctor, which I had Harry Nilsson and Ringo Starr and Jimmy Webb and a lot of celebrities, Eric Carmen, record in my living room. And that brought me back in the Turtles again. Mark Volman called me up 6 years later and said, we want you back in the West Coast Band. You're going to run the West Coast Band. And that was in 1990, whatever it was, 3 or whatever.
Okay, so that was after this. Yeah, the two listed on your is Chris Apostle and Peter Zale. I don't know if you know them or know of them.
Yes, Peter Zale and Chris Apostle, yes. Those were the guys who took my place. But that's when they did a whole bunch of bottom line recordings. I'm on one of them from the 80s. But most of them were in the 90s.
The New York Times, yeah.
The New York Times, I'm on one song or something on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was doing a lot of stuff with Mark and Howard in the studio during that 6 years. The Strawberry Shortcake and all those stuff. And we did the Gary Shandling show. We did a couple of other things. I did the thing at Universal City Studios where I met Harry Nilsson. And, I met everybody, Elvira and Mickey Dolenz. And, I already knew Mickey from the road. But, Eric Burden and Dean Torrance and, Richard Lewis and all these Kevin Meaney. But I was doing a lot of stuff when I was fired from the band. We still were doing studio stuff, and I would still get high with them and hang out in the office and stuff.
Wow.
So there was no bad feelings. But my chops got really good being the demo Doctor. I got all my chops back, and I was able to play everything perfectly. So now I'm okay.
That's great. I think also on your website, a couple non-Turtles albums I want to talk about. One is the Monkees' Pool It. What did you do for Pool It? You mentioned Mickey Dolenz, so.
Yes, I was hired by their producer, Brian O'Rourke's Harold Bronson called up Louis Natkin, I think that's his name, and he said, Andy, we want you to play some keyboards on the Pool It album. So there was a Davy Jones song called I'll Love You Forever. And that's the one I'm on the keyboards.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And so there's a really funny story. When we toured, when I rejoined the band, in the 1993 or whenever it was, they would introduce me as the guy who played this keyboard part. And I would go, would do, the Monkey song, and everybody in the audience thought that I was the guy who wrote that part. Because Mark Volman treats it as theater. So they would tell you the drummer was with Santana washing his car, and the guitar player was with Stevie Ray Vaughan, and the bass player was with the Four Tops. And they said I played that song for the Monkees. It's all a lie. It's all theater. That's how Mark Volman explains it.
So you only played on that one song on that album. You didn't tour with them ever.
Nope, never did. But we did tour with the Monkees a lot.
Oh, that's what I meant. You did tour with the Monkees, but
so
as in the Turtles, though. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There was there was one really wonderful concert with the animals, the monkeys, and the turtles. And I said to myself, how cool is that? You know?
Just for Mark's edification, it was Dolenz, Jones, Boyce, and Hart at that time,
Yeah,
and the animals, and Andy with the turtles.
Oh, so it was
right.
that far. It was back in the 70s. I thought it might have been in the 80s. Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that was in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
There was a Happy Together tour, but in between that, we would do some Monkeys concerts. And
Right.
yeah, a lot of
But I know
fun.
with all those Happy Together tours, I'm sure you're always bumping into people. I mean, you're bumping into Mickey, you're bumping into Ron Dante, you're bumping into over the years probably David Cassidy and Bobby Sherman. When they joined forces and everything, right?
Well, I've met every idol that I grew up listening to. Tommy Rowe, you know,
Yeah.
and all these guys. What's the little children? Why don't you go back?
Billy
Who
J.
did that?
Kramer. Billy J.
Yeah,
Kramer.
I met him. I met all these amazing, what's his name? Shoot, all the guys from the Happy Together tour.
Yeah.
All the different bands and all the different acts. But I got to meet so many people because of my relationship with Flo and Eddie that I'm very grateful for, which really made it easy to write the book.
hmm So a couple more albums I want to talk about. One, you mentioned on your page working on what became Harry Nilsson's final album. Now, it wasn't clear, but it sounds like you're not on the album, but you were on the demos. Is that how it worked, or explain?
Yes, Harry and I became high school buddies. He had 11 kids at home, and he was never home. He was over my house, smoking a joint, going for a ride in his car, listening to all of his music, and we're singing at the top of our lungs. So we were very, very close, and I recorded 35 songs in my living room with Harry
Wow.
Nilsson.
Wow.
On the beginning of it was on a 4-track cassette. And we actually did a soundtrack to a movie called Me, Myself, and I. It's featuring George Siegel and Jo Beth Williams. And Harry and I did all the music to the movie and the theme song, and it was all recorded on a 4-track cassette.
Wow.
And when we went to the premiere, we laughed because it sounded wonderful. It sounded big and huge on these speakers in the movie theater. But Harry and I were laughing, going, if they only knew it was a 4-track cassette. So that's really funny. But Harry and I recorded 35 songs. And when he passed away, Mark Hudson had done some songs with Harry. But Harry was angry at Mark Hudson because every time Harry would call Mark up, he would never return Harry's call. And so he says, Andy, forget it. I'm going to just work with you. So we did 35 songs in my thing. And at the funeral, Mark Hudson gets up and says, Andy was Harry's home away from home, and he encouraged Harry to get back into music because Harry had stopped playing music and had a script company called Hawkeye. But anyway, so we recorded all these songs, and then Harry died, and I gave all the master recordings, the cassettes and the ADAT and all the DAT to Una, Harry's widow. And then Mark Hudson, 20 years later, decides to release the songs that I recorded in my living room with Harry and take all my music off the track and re-record all the music with his setup.
Wow.
And, the microphone was a Shure SM58, for God's sakes, And it's really, so when he released the album, they didn't give me any credit at all. They didn't mention me at all. Yeah. And it really pissed me off. And Harry and Mark Hudson and I recorded the very last song that Harry Nilsson did before he died. It was called Rescue Boy. It's on that album. And it's in my living room, and my synthesizer had timpani drums. And Mark Hudson was playing with the timpani drums, and we were doing high heel sneakers. Put on your high heel sneakers. And it was a shuffle, bum, 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 bum. And he played that with the timpani drums, and that became very unique. And he used those timpanis on the album, but I never got any credit for any of that stuff.
Wow.
And at that recording session, Harry said to Mark, he says, you know what, Mark, please, I want to make it a record right now that I will pay Andy Cahan 10% of what happens with these demos. And Mark nodded his head, and we all said, hey, that's great. I should have said, put that in writing.
Yeah.
Because if that was in writing, then I would have been covered. But it was just spoken, and there's no recording of him speaking it. So it's unfortunate, but that's what happened. So I had 35. I made myself a copy of all the masters.
Oh, that's
so
good.
I have the safety copy.
Is there any chance of any of the other ones coming out that didn't make the...
Yeah, I don't think Una wants to do that. She just let this one album come out. And I don't know how it's doing. Do you guys know if it's selling?
Well, I got a copy of it, so it's probably negligible, I hate to say, because at this point, Harry Nilsson's kind of a cult item in a certain way. People who love him, like me, and will remember him for like The Point, which is another Wolf Murasaki production. Or, maybe everybody's talking from Midnight Cowboy or the Nilsson Schmilsson album. But, beyond that, unless you're really hardcore fan like I am, I have all the albums of Popeye and everything. It just kind of quietly came out. I had to order it online. I never saw it in any stores. So, yeah.
Hey, Andy, can I ask you, all your whole tenure with the Turtles, were you always hired gun? Were you ever on salary? Was it a pay by play? What was your financial scenario with them?
Yeah, it was pay by play. You got a gig, you get paid. You got a recording session, you get paid. It wasn't a salary.
Gotcha. And that was the case with everyone except for the bosses, right?
Right. They owned everything and they ran the ship, but they treated everybody fantastic. Right. Everybody who's been in their band has always been completely happy because Mark and Howard are great entertainers and very professional, and it's a complete wonderment to play with the Turtles.
Oh, I do have a question about that. It's kind of amusing. I don't know if they do this now, maybe not since COVID and maybe not since, Howard's been kind of out of commission for a while. But they used to have on the Turtles website a contract that you could print out, and it had basically a list of all their demands that they needed to have a show. And if you paid the fee, had all the things they needed, like they needed water or certain treats or a limo or what, I forgot all the things. But if you met all those qualifications, they'd play at your wedding, they'd play at your bar mitzvah, they'd play it anywhere, Did you ever do any of those kind of small shows or anything like that? If somebody actually came up with the dough and all the accoutrements that they wanted?
We did several of those. There was wealthy people that hired the Turtles for their private party. And there was one party we played when we ended the night. We did Happy Together. Everybody loved it. Then the owner of the guy the party was for, he says, I'll give you guys extra money. Would you please play Happy Together again? And all the equipment was torn down. There was no more equipment on stage. So the guitar player picked up an acoustic guitar, and Howard sang Happy Together with the guitar player acoustic.
Wow.
But we've done amazing small party stuff. Yeah, that is a very
Okay,
true
okay.
thing.
Because I
And
was even tempted as a fan. I was saying, because it wasn't a lot of money. I mean, it was a decent amount, but if you got a few friends together, you could put it on as if just a few $1,000s, But
I
anyway,
know. Yeah, I actually did all the advance work. I was the road manager for the West Coast band,
mm,
so they paid me a little extra to do all the advance work with the hotels, the airplanes, the backstage of food, all the stuff that we wanted taken care of.
mm.
So I would do that too.
Now, I basically have only one more question, and this might take a while to answer. That's why. So I have Howard Kalin's
Solo album.
one and only solo album, Dust Bunnies, and I love this album. How did that come about, and why wasn't Mark involved? I mean, was he busy, or he just didn't want to do it, or what was the circumstances behind that?
Okay, we were on an airplane flying to Belgium to play a concert with the Monkees, Procol Harum, the Trogs, and like Slade or something. And we were on the airplane, and of course I was sitting next to Davy Jones, and all we did was talk about horses, because I love horses and he loved horses.
Okay.
But then I got up out of my seat and I sat next to Howard. I said, Howard, I'll tell you what, I was doing all these demos with Harry Nilsson and Ringo Starr and Eric Carmen and doing all these demos. I said, let's do a Howard Kalin album. Pick out 10 songs that you always wanted to sing, and I'll sequence and program them in my living room on my synthesizer, and we'll put out an album. And that's how it came about. So Howard would send me all these songs, 10 songs that are on the album, and I would duplicate them with my synthesizer. The bass, the drums, the guitar, all the instruments, and then Howard would sing it in my living room. So we made this album, and then all of a sudden, this guy named David Spiro, who was good friends with Ringo and good friends with Billy Bob, and he was running the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Anyway, so he called up Howard and said, hey, listen, Billy Bob Thornton is offering his studio to you to finish your album that you're doing with Andy. So we go over to Billy Bob Thornton's house.
Wow.
Now, I got to tell you about this. This is the most amazing story you're ever going to hear. Billy Bob Thornton lives on Roxbury in Beverly Hills. The house he lives in used to belong to Cecil B. DeMille.
Wow.
And during Prohibition, Cecil would hold alcohol parties, in his basement. Now, the basement had a tunnel going from Roxbury Drive to La Cienega Boulevard in Beverly Hills.
Wow.
And there was a phony storefront on La Cienega Boulevard. And all these movie stars would take their limos, go into this phony storefront, go down the elevator to the tunnel, and take the tunnel to Cecil B. DeMille's house for the party. Now, this is the house that Billy Bob lives in still. Now, Cecil B. sold the house to Roger Corman. And then Roger Corman sold the house to Roman Polanski.
Oh, my.
Wow.
And Roman Polanski sold the house to Slash of Guns N' Roses.
Mm-hmm.
So Slash is the one who built the studio in the basement. So when Billy Bob Thornton bought the house, it came with the studio in the basement. So it's a complete studio. And, he would get all these people to come over. He would get Holly, what's his name? Oh, geez, my brain is not working. Holly Williams, Hank
Oh.
Williams Jr.'s daughter. Holly
Okay.
Williams. So she would go there. Moon Zappa would go there. Don Was the producer. Yeah, he and I were in the studio playing a couple of guitars, and we were jamming on a song by Major Lance called Monkey Time.
Right.
Monkey Time. So anyways, recording in that studio was completely amazing. And Billy Bob did a cameo performance on a song called Music. And I produced the whole thing on Pro Tools. You know, I had to transfer my demos from my living room into the studio so we can finish it in there. And Howard actually had some musicians in New York play drums and bass and guitar, but they used a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and they should have used Pro Tools, because when we got the recordings from them and we tried to sync it up with my recording, it got out of sync because it wasn't, it was a reel-to-reel machine that changed, you know, speed. So it was a pain in the ass.
Wow.
But we got a good album out of it.
Yeah,
it's a good
I
album.
like this album. And, you know, it shows that, you know, like 2 of the tracks are by the Left Bank, so apparently he's a big fan of them. And,
totally.
Yeah. And there's a couple others. But anyway, you know, and it's like, now, I maybe I misheard you or something. You know, how did you get in contact with Billy Bob about the studio? I mean, were Howard and him friends, or is it just Billy Bob got caught wind you were making an album?
David Spiro.
Okay, you said
David Spiro called Howard and said Billy Bob wants you to record in his studio.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I just kind of missed that little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, Billy Bob has in his hallway, in his living room, he has a gigantic wall, like a blackboard. And all these celebrities and movie stars would sign it to him. So when Howard Kalin came over, he asked Howard to sign it. So Howard signed it. And then Billy Bob got on his knees and he prayed to Howard, like with his hands up and down, like he's, you know, praying in a Muslim thing, and says, "You're the best in the world. I love you. You're great." So Billy Bob knew every single word to all of the Frank Zappa, you know, Flo and Eddie. He knew every
he's a fan.
word.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
And he knew every word to every Turtle song. Billy Bob was a gigantic fan of Howard Kalin and Mark Volman.
Wow.
Now, was there ever any thought of bringing Mark in on this project, or is it just, let's just do it with Howard?
It was just designed as a Howard solo album. When I sat next to him on that airplane in 1993 or whatever it was, and I said, "Howard, let's do an album. Just pick out 10 songs that you want to do, and we'll do it."
Although he did get Mark on there just from the standpoint as he co-wrote Easy Street, so I guess that was his nod to his friend.
He co-wrote Easy Street. Yeah, that was the demos that we made for that were funny too. I've done so many demos with them; it's incredible.
Hey, Andy, how come you didn't do a solo Mark Volman album?
Yeah, I should have. I wanted to. In fact, I spoke to Mark the other day. Are you guys familiar with the 2.5 Man show I did with Flo and Eddie?
It's the two of you and him?
Yeah, it's just it was a vaudeville comedy act where we have a slide projector and show movies and have stuffed animals and all these props on the stage. It was called the 2.5 Man show, and we toured Europe during that.
Wow.
But I forgot what I was talking about again. It's all this goddamn marijuana.
No, I had asked if you did a solo album with him, and you said you just spoke to him about something.
Oh, yes, Mark Volman. So Mark Volman was on the phone with me, and he says, "Let's go on the road and do the 1.5 Man show," because Howard is unable to go on the road anymore.
Right.
His health prevents him. As a matter of fact, Ron Dante is the new lead singer of the Turtles.
Right.
And what they did was every concert tour, they would sell a CD of all the groups on the Happy Together tour. So they wanted to put out Happy Together, but they didn't want Ron Dante to sing it. They wanted Howard Kalin to sing it. So they had me record Howard singing in my living room, Happy Together, for this live track of the band on stage. So that was the very final definitive version of Happy Together that I recorded with Howard.
You know, Ron is a great guy and so talented beyond, you know, the Archies and everything else. Why was he selected as the vocalist? He's certainly not Mr. Bombastic. He doesn't, you know, what was the criteria for selecting him to take Howard's place?
Well, Mark Volman made the decision because Ron Dante had toured with Mark Volman, and Ron does have a good voice. You know, he's got a good voice, and
He's got a great voice. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mark decided to have Ron, and he enjoys it because Ron's very uppity and very happy and very positive, and he stands on the end of the stage and watches the whole show, and he's always very, very enthusiastic.
He's great.
He's really cool guy. He produced Barry Manilow. Did you know he produced Barry Manilow?
For 7 years, of course. He also produced Broadway shows. It's beyond, you know, what we know. Ron Dante's credits are amazing.
Yeah, he's just a really sweet guy. He's very nice.
He's a real mensch. He's one of the nicest guys in show business, no doubt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's really terrific. We both have friends back in New York. David Spinoza, guitar player, who played on the Archies stuff.
Right.
And yeah, so we know the same people from way back.
Great.
So what are the plans now, I guess? I mean, obviously we're on COVID hiatus, but I mean, once that's all over, are you back on the road again? Do you know what's the plans?
Well, I'm not a member of the touring band anymore.
Okay.
Mark Volman has a guy named Godfrey Townsend, who's a guitar player, and he put together the band, the drummer and the bass player and the keyboard for the Turtles, for Mark and Howard. So they're sticking with Godfrey and his crew for their touring, the Happy Together tour. But you know, I'm very grateful that I was with them 46 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this answer to this, but for a while, the Turtles keyboard player was Greg Hawkes from the Cars. How did that come about?
Well, Mark knew him. You know, he knew Mark and Howard know everybody.
Yeah, literally. I was gonna say they probably know everybody.
They know everybody. So they needed another keyboard player for the East Coast band. So either Joe Stefko or Tristan Arvekian, somebody recommended, or maybe Mark just decided to hire Greg. So he did play on the East Coast band.
Yeah, another great guy.
Yeah, there's a lot of musicians that played with Flo and Eddie, a lot.
Mm-hmm. And I have a question, just because I've seen Flo and Eddie and the Turtles over the years. They have this ability, and they did on the one album you're not on, but I mean, they have this ability to just kind of go into imitating Bruce Springsteen, or on the one you did, Illegal Immoral Fattening, you suddenly just go into Bang a Gong, and then you do Jumpin' Jack Flash, and then you do My Sweet Lord with no effort at all, it seems like. But I mean, is it hard to just take those cues and just suddenly do a song like that?
That was what our rehearsal was, the comedy. We already knew how to play the hit records. It was just working out the comedy routines with all the, and they did that with Zappa. So they took that Zappa show and they put it into their new show with Flo and Eddie, and you know, all the funny stuff with the costumes and the, you know, really funny stuff, really funny.
Yep, I love that album. I mean, just, you know, the funny thing is, like, the song "Cheap" just the way it's done makes it sound cheap, but that's the whole point, I think. They
What's really
sing
good,
cheap off key and stuff like that. Cheap.
yeah. What's really great about that song is there's this whole concert is a great big hunk of shit. Yeah. And when we played the Crater Bowl with Fleetwood Mac, we opened up for Fleetwood Mac at the Crater Bowl, and the news in Hawaii recorded Flo and Eddie doing the song "Cheap," and so they let it go. That you can hear Mark and Howard singing, "This whole concert is a great big hunk of shit, yeah," and it was on the news
Oh,
in Hawaii, and I'm going, that is so funny. So
unbelievable.
yeah, it was great working with Fleetwood Mac. I used to hang out with Stevie on the beach there in Hawaii, and oh my God, what a beautiful woman she is.
Wow.
All right. I don't have any more questions, so I don't know. Charles, what do you have?
I want to, once again give a plug for Andy's book, The Most Famous Musician You've Never Heard Of, a rock and roll scrapbook, which is, a must-have if you love the music that we all love, and you want to hear more of Andy's great stories. It's a must-have, and you can get it through Amazon and all the
I
right
need
places.
one.
It's really phenomenal, and Andy is just such a gentleman about doing interviews and sharing his stories. So we want to thank him, from the bottom of our hearts. So I just want to say that, and Mark, you can do the close.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Andy and Charles for being my special guest on the Fun Ideas podcast. And we'll see you on the next show.
Well, I'm honored. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm available anytime you want. It's pandemic time, and all we're doing is sitting around.
We'll call you back at 2 a.m.
Right.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready, my friend. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Thank you again.
Right. Thanks a lot.
You're so welcome.
All right. You hit the record.